Hello, my name's Nick Harris. I'm an illustrator. Today we're going to be painting a woodland scene in ArtRage of some folklore characters doing some painting of their own. And as you'll see very soon, I already changed my mind about one of the characters, that mop-haired what's-it at the front, and decided it needs to be a more appealing character, like a mother and child sort of group. Not quite sure what he was supposed to be. I'm working with basic tools of pencil, pastel, a watercolour and palette knife, which is a blender, and just working on separate layers for the different things, with watercolour laid in translucent over the top. And for reference, I go to the reference panel. I'll show you how I did that. Obviously this isn't a toadstool that I'm loading, it's a tree, but you just do what I did there. Go to the place on your hard drive where you've saved the image, and then once it's loaded you can drag it about, you can scale it, you can scale the image within the palette like that, and you can move it about once you've scaled it to focus on the bit you want. And you can even rotate it. God, all the fun you're going to have. Generally speaking, my process involves blocking in colour behind a drawing and then laying tonal washes over the top. They'll be set, the layers will be set to multiply mode, the same as you get in Photoshop and that sort of thing. And by building up the colours at the back on various layers, you can make them quite subtle and interesting. And then by bringing in various layers of tone, you can add real depth to the things and quite a lot of nuances and subtlety. Trying to work on the whole image as I go, so I don't get too drawn into one bit and go fettling. Fettling is one of my weaknesses. This scene is supposed to have light coming from high on the left, sunshine, with a big cast shadow over the figures at the front there, a bit of dappled sunlight, and describing the figures at the back, the one on the left in the tree and the witch up the tree here. So while I'm focused in on things like that, a good idea would be to have a new view. So if you go to the reference panel again and open it up like that, like we did before, instead of going to reference, we go to new view, and it does what it says on the tin. You get a duplicate version of the image that you can paint in. Watch that. How cool is this? So you can have two different versions of the image that you can work in. You can have more than that, in fact. I think two is enough for me. But that's going to be really useful, so that you, when you're working in close like this, you can just glance up and see how it's affecting the whole picture, like standing back from a real canvas. So as I move in close to work up the form on the character in the background, I can still see him in relation to the whole composition, which is ideal. I should have set this new view up earlier, and I've been blocking in some of the foliage and general shapes in the background with some more colour. But to fill the stuff at the front with more detail, I'm going to use a sticker spray. That's the brush icon there, and that's just me showing it's like an image hose, but it's one of the two brush engines you have in ArtRage, which are brilliant. They take a little bit of setting up. There are a number of different palettes to control stickers, and what you need is sticker sheets. It comes with a load of presets of its own, but you can make your own, like I have done a few times. You set them up on a grid like this. There are 16 images in a grid, and then you will load them into the spray through the sticker sheets palette. I'm not going to do that now because I'm just going to show you the general bits and pieces about how this works. And it already comes with a load of presets. You see all those down there, which are set into various groups, and I've set up my own various groups. And you do just access them once they're set up like that. You just click it and it works like a normal brush, like a normal image hose. That one's wildflower. I use that in the little girl's hair at the front a bit later. Another control that relates to sticker spray is the spray rate. So as well as once you've got the preset set up, you can still tweak it how much it's going to spray. You see, that is quite different to the random splotting over wild flowers that I had before. That's more like a wreath coming at you. And you can have shadows on them if you want. That does make them look more like they're stuck on, but if that's the sort of effect you're looking for, then that can be useful. So I just dragged that off because it, rather than having to keep opening it. Now the thing that gives you all the control is a palette called Spray Variation. You click on it, get through the settings palette. Now all these, it's done in the form of a grid, and you just go along and down to see how the things cross, like pen pressure to scale, and stroke direction to rotation. And if you, the little circles, you drag up and down, and that gives you from -200 to +200 degrees of control in all those different dialogues. So as you can imagine, there's quite a lot of things to play with here, and the best thing I can suggest is that you just try playing with it to find out how it works. I could sit here trying to explain it and get you in as many knots as I got myself in when I was trying to work it out. But spend some time with it, and you might just find out it's a lifesaver. You can set up brushes that will serve you well for a long time. Luminance, you can control everything in here. And just try playing with them. The hue, it's how much colour there is. I use random a lot as a setting, because particularly for natural things like this, you want a degree of randomness, because if you try and paint random things, you can't help it. You set patterns as you do it. You just almost naturally do it. It's hard to avoid it. Look, I've just using the hue and the random. I just sort of changed a load of colour. You can change random rotation. It doesn't really show up very well in these because they're quite round, so you can't. It's not harder to spot. Oh, good choice, Nick. Sequence. Everything. You've got control over pretty much everything here. So if you're a megalomaniac, you're going to have hours of fun with this, and hopefully end up with some really cool and useful brushes. That's the leaf that suddenly appeared up in the trees. Obviously, I didn't paint the red. That's just because of the colour. Oh yes, when you create sticker sheets, if you want to control the colour, you have to create your images in pure red, and then they respond to colour. Don't ask me why. That's just how it is. Even though the images in the image hose were painted by me, as is the painting itself, you still need to work to get the thing to fit in, to blend in better. So you'll need to cut bits away and soften bits to fit in with the composition. This is just me loading another reference image for the bark on the tree, and then having done that, I will also just paint a few wildflowers into the girl's hair. That was always the idea I had. And now let's look at the other brush engine in here, the Brush Designer. This is the icon for the brush itself, a custom brush, and there's some presets that I made earlier. It comes with a raft of its own, so you've got a flying start when you get ArtRage, and they're very good and very useful. But you can make ones that are more tailored to yourself quite easily in this way. That's where you get to the Brush Designer, and that's what it looks like. You have a brush head, you have lots of controls. You can access the presets actually through the dialogue there. Let's go for that one because I use that one. This brush head I made for this specific tutorial. It's just a small image I painted white on black of a sort of a twig with some leaves on it, and like that. That is the brush head I loaded in. And then if you tweak the controls, the different controls, you'll see you have all Things like rotation, jitter, that just means, again, random variability. If you turn that down, then it stays more to the central line that you're following. You test the brushes out in that little area there, and then just clear it. You can have taper lengths. That means it could go smaller to larger like that, or larger to smaller in this case, or the other way around. Because you have taper bias, you can have it go one way or the other. That could be very handy. You can do the same thing with opacity so that it disappears. Not quite so obvious to see there. That's more obvious. Better. Grain amount is to do with how much the paper grain that you've got influences the image. You can control the size it starts at, the minimum size, how much pressure variability there is to it, how much size variability there is to it. The same as it was in stickers, but you don't have to go through this grid. This is more easy to use. Hue variability, vary the colour. So if you want some psychedelic leaves, there you go. And now you can also have paint depth, so you can more impasto look to it. I'm going to have to turn down the opacity tapering, because that's making it hard to see. That's all I'm doing there. And then go back to the come on, get on with it. Go back. That's it. That's better. Now you can see there is actually more depth to this now. Paint depth, like it's painted with more body colour paint as opposed to a watercolour or a flat print. So again, there's a lot of controls in this, so you can really tailor your brush. I'm doing this to work a bit like an image hose again, because I don't want to spend hours painting leaves. But you can design your own brush heads just to have interesting bristle arrangements and that kind of thing. You can see you're just playing with the different... again, the best thing you can do, get into this thing, play about with it for a bit. You'll soon get the hang of it. Because you can try it out in that little area there and see exactly what you're doing immediately and find out what the controls do. Very, very useful. And once you've got a setting you like, the best thing you can do is make it into a preset. Save it as a preset so you've got it in the future, like this. Just make a new preset, name it, put it where you want, and then it's there for as long as you want it. There we go. How useful is that? 2 brush engines. Woohoo! I was actually making this brush to paint the foliage behind the witch here, because I didn't want to spend hours doing that. But I think the paint depth, the paint texture is a bit strong. I might go back and change the settings on that. Yeah. Now I want to work on the figures at the front a bit more, and I've turned the tonal layers off so I can actually see the colours. And having worked on that, I'd turn it back on again, because the tone and the solid colour has to work together. Pull back. Yeah, getting close to being able to stop now. Need to do the little girl's feet. Haven't sorted them out yet. I think she may have some shoes. Dropping a bit of foliage at the front to give it some sort of sense of scale, because they're supposed to be quite small. The mushroom should do that, toadstool should do that, but this helps. Anyway, and that's more or less where I think I'm going to leave it. And when we pull back in a minute, then you'll see where we ended up. Now, I know this wasn't the most detailed tutorial you'll ever have, but hopefully you get a few bits and pieces out of it. Catch you next time. Bye!